Welcome to the November edition of Northeast Journal. I'm your host, Joe Cullen. Coming up in the next half hour, we'll celebrate the fall season at Country Sun Farm in Lake Elmo. We'll step back into time with the White Bear Lake Area Historical Society, and we'll find out about a group that offers support, guidance, and hope for women diagnosed with breast cancer. All that and more is straight ahead on Northeast Journal. Hello everyone, and welcome to the November edition of Northeast Journal. I'm your host, Joe Cullen. Every month on Northeast Journal, we give you an inside look at the people and places that make up the northeast section of the Twin Cities. Generations of area residents make the trip each fall to a beautiful farm in Lake Elmo to get pumpkins, see a variety of animals, and take beautiful photos. Here's a look at Country Sun Farm.
Started with just selling pumpkins for Halloween, and it became, people wanted more to do, something to see and stuff. So now we have a petting zoo that's free. Kids can come out and see cows, goats, sheep, different farm animals. We do a hayride that goes all the way around the farm, shows them some pumpkins, has some fun stuff on it, just Halloween stuff for kids to see. And we also do a corn maze, that's a 3-acre cornfield. With trails in it. Kids get to walk through there, try to find their way back out of the cornfield. Pumpkins is still our focus. We were just out picking pumpkins today. We grow all of our own pumpkins. We had a great season for pumpkins this year. It's a great place to come out on the weekend. Like I said, there's food, there's stuff to do. You can spend an hour here, you can spend all day here. Everybody has a good time, and we get thanked a lot for putting on something that the whole family can enjoy. The fun thing is now a lot of people will come out and they'll be like, oh my gosh, I remember coming here as I was a kid. My parents took pictures of us in front of the big pumpkin. Now I'm taking pictures of my kids in front of the pumpkin, It's something that's become part of their memories of their childhood growing up.
In just a few minutes, we'll be joined in the studio by the Executive Director of the White Bear Area Historical Society, who will, among other things, give us an update on the moving of the old White Bear Township Hall that took place almost 2 years ago. But first, here's a look back at what happened during the move 2 years ago from producer Jeffrey Wilson.
We are all too quick to tear things down and rebuild something new, and it's kind of amazing when you think about all the things that they've moved over the years, over the decades. We're constantly surrounded with stories and photos of buildings that have been repurposed or picked up, houses or commercial buildings that are picked up and moved around the downtown or other places, and we're excited that this one's being saved. You just get a real sense of that history when you go to the place where your grandparents went or your neighbors went or whatever generations ago, and shared that sense of place and camaraderie. Whitebear Town Hall was built in 1885. The township commissioned an architect, which we firmly believe is Cass Gilbert, when he was very young and just getting started, to design a town hall for the purpose of their meetings. The township was formed in 1858, on the same day Minnesota became a state, and they had no place specifically to meet up until 1885. So for almost 30 years, they were meeting in the hotels and resorts and different places. And so from 1885 until 2011, when the town board chose to no longer meet in this building, that was their home. Some are concerned with the idea that we're moving a historic building off of its site, and that is an issue generally, and typically it's not something I would necessarily advise, but under these circumstances, this is not the first spot where this town hall has sat. It was originally built over on the shore of Whitebear Lake, between Whitebear and Goose Lakes, and in 1909 had to be moved right along the edge of essentially what is Highway 61 today and Whitebear Avenue. And then when the highway was straightened through that area in 1951, it was moved to Hoffman Road, where it is right now. It's been a long road to save the town hall. We've had to convince a lot of people that it really does have heart and that the core of the building is still there. And because it suffered fires, because it's been moved, a lot of folks feel that it's lost its integrity as a structure. And so then people say, well, it's not original. Well, it depends on what story you're telling. To me, all of those layers are part of that story. This building just has so much history and has suffered so much, frankly, itself. It suffered fires, it suffered remodelings that weren't necessarily gentle. It suffered the move. And so to be able to sort of honor it and put it in the park, and it'll be such a better place for it to be used for educational purposes, for school groups, for tours, and just for the public to be able to come visit. The spot where it's been for the last 60 some years is not super inviting to the public. It's on the edge of the highway and all of that, so this will give it more of a place to settle.
And I'm now joined by the Executive Director of the Whitebear Lake Area Historical Society, Sara Hanson. And Sara, I want to thank you so much for being on Northeast Journal today.
Thanks for having me.
I know we've had you on in the past, and it seemed like we just did, but it actually was about 2 years ago, and talking about the same topic we're talking now. We just saw the story that was done a couple years ago about the Heritage Hall as it was being moved, and I thought it'd be a good time to kind of check in here. We're almost a couple years later. What kind of things are happening now?
It's amazing how fast time disappears before us, and a lot has happened over the last couple of years, actually. The building, of course, was moved to its fourth location, which is Polar Lakes Park, and since that time, before as well, but since that time, the Historical Society has been working really hard to try to track down as much information about it as possible. That has included a grant from the State Legacy Program to do research at the Cass Gilbert Collection at the New York Historical Society, where we were hoping to find a smoking gun to absolutely make the link between Cass Gilbert and the building, and find drawings and all of those wonderful things. And unfortunately, as I know all too well, the historical research process doesn't always work out quite like you plan. But that's okay, because we found a lot of other connections between Cass and the building and the contractor who constructed it, and lots of other details from that standpoint, as well as other work he had done in the area, which is fantastic. That was followed up by a visit to the Library of Congress with the Cass Gilbert collection there, because his records are basically spread all over the country, which makes for an interesting research process in itself. There we were excited to find a number of documents and things that linked Cass, or correspondence with Cass with his family and others. But what was most intriguing was sort of a last-minute afterthought, was a scrapbook that they hold in their art collection that has a lot of unlabeled information, a lot of unlabeled drawings and things, but in it we found what we believe are design sketches for the town hall building. The design has changed, as often happens when you sit down and scratch something out, and it was literally on tissue paper that's torn on the edges and the whole shebang, but it's all sides of the building that has the same proportions, the same roof line, the same brackets, the same concept, and that really sort of spurred us ahead again. With all of that, we've had, for a number of years now, we've had the 1914 photograph that we've used to sort of tell us what the building looked like. And so we've been working toward recreating that. Unfortunately, it's only a small portion around the doorway area, but it shows us a lot of the decorative elements and the original pieces. So it's been an interesting process, almost like a puzzle, piecing it all back together. And so since the move, the township has built a full basement on the site at the park, placed the building there, and then has gone through all of the setting work, if you will, to do that. And with our guidance on the colors and the techniques and things, we've been able to work forward to get the exterior at least in shape, which is exciting.
So yeah, I'm sure, like you said, I mean, this is all very exciting, but at the same time, it's a lot of painstaking work. It's not something that just,
It doesn't happen overnight.
happens overnight.
No,
and
not at all.
Like you say, I'm sure there's a lot of, dead ends is the right word, but like you say, you obviously are hopeful if you're searching in a certain area for info, and maybe, have to start somewhere else. And I'm sure you learn other interesting things along the way, but I'm sure it is a lot of work.
It never ceases to amaze me where the things actually do pop up. I mean, you try all the logical spots, and then it's sort of when you sit back and say, okay, I don't know where else to go, that something pops out of the woodwork. And that's kind of what happened with the interior of the building for us. The exterior hasn't been easy, but in some ways is a little bit easier because of that 1914 photo. And the story of the building is that it was, of course, built in 1885 by Cass Gilbert, or designed by Cass Gilbert in 1885 and constructed. It's made several moves. In 1923, when it sat roughly where Highway 61 meets Wiper Avenue, there was a fire. We know from the fire department records and the Wiper Press archives that there was a grass fire. There were several actually that day in April of 1923. And the headlines or the story in the Wiper Press say that it nearly totally destroyed the town hall and all of these things. And we thought, that's how much of the building is really left? Because that's been one of the arguments as we've gone through this process. And is it really worth it? We were able to go in. This is really sort of the thrilling part. We didn't know much about the interior of the building we have no photographs inside until the 1970s, and those are slim as well. And so we don't really know what it looked like in those early decades at all. But we went in knowing that there were probably windows across the back wall, and essentially got permission from the township to take that interior, take the sheetrock or the drywall down on the inside to try to see the framing, the original framing. And it was sort of entertaining because as our crew was there doing it, they kept taking away more and more and saying, yeah, I don't see anything. And it's like, I kept saying, keep going, let's see. They got the entire back wall open and said, there's nothing other than what the windows we knew about, which are strangely positioned. They've been covered over in recent years, but they're strangely positioned for what Cass Gilbert probably would have done. And so it just doesn't feel right. And then all of a sudden, one of our volunteers was sort of in the corner of the building, and he had pulled back some drywall on the side. He said, you need to come here. I was like, okay. I went and took a look. He's a firefighter, and he said, look at all this charring on the corner. There's something going on here. I said, okay, keep pulling it back. And so they did, and what we discovered was actually the entry point from the grass fire in 1923. And based on the charring and the burn pattern, you could totally see exactly where it came in. You could also see, they opened up enough of the wall at that point that you could also see the 1885 lumber and square nails. So you could tell that was the original construction side of things. And then when you looked at the back wall, you could tell it was much more modern. So it was, the lumber there is much more uniform, the nails are more up to date. So we were able to determine that the fire came in here, took out the entire back wall essentially, or they replaced it, they rebuilt it, meaning of course that we lost the placement of those original windows, which in the sketches we have would have been centered, but they weren't in 1923. And then we were able to track down the idea that they were off to the left because, of course, the much needed outhouse was on the right-hand side of the back of the building. So it was, they were off-centered that way. And then it led to finding the charring and the rafters, because of course we basically took out everything at that point to see what the building could share with us. But the charring and the rafters all the way through to the front, and then the burn evidence in the front. And we're able to document in a really exciting fashion. I keep saying exciting because this is exciting to me. Others sort of think I'm crazy, but that's okay. But it was fascinating because these are questions we've had for a long time, and now we were able to go back and say, okay, here's what the building is telling us, and it's really speaking to us at this point.
Well, it's exciting because, I mean, there's such a rich history in this area, and to be
Absolutely.
Learning new things. And so what's kind of the long-term goal? Is this something you hope to be able to open up to the public and have tours and things like that, somewhere down the road?
Absolutely. So the Historical Society and the Township have entered into a partnership, and essentially the town board does not meet in the building at this point. Obviously they can't right now with the way it is anyway. So they have a separate meeting location that they've been using, although there's hope that they'll come back and meet at least periodically in this building once it's back up and running. The long-term goal is from an educational standpoint, community education. So whether it be adults and presentations in the evenings or the weekends or tours or student groups, which we're really focused on. The timing is incredible, being that Cass went from 1885 doing this little government building, if you will, and it's what we believe is his first public building, to a decade later doing the Minnesota State Capitol, which of course has been in the news like crazy with the renovation and restoration that's been going on there. Over the last several years. So it's such a wonderful tie-in, and then he went on to do the U.S. Supreme Court building and all of those things. It's just a great connection to all of that. So right now the goal is we're just wrapping up, or the town is just wrapping up on the exterior part of the building. We have been going in and documenting all of now that the walls are open, documenting all of the things we can find. And then we're just shifting into, okay, it's time to start wiring the building and putting the walls back on and all of that. So that we can be ready, hopefully in 2018, to do more programming in there. We've done a little bit, frankly, with those hardy groups who are willing to go in and actually take it as it is and learn from what we can see. But we want to get it, obviously, more to a safe point to have kids in there and that sort of thing, and be able to do all sorts of programming. So
I know you kind of already have an audience that's hungry for all this knowledge. I know for
Absolutely.
Many of the other programs you offer, various locations throughout town, seems like I'm assuming must be well attended, because when I see your newsletters, there's so many offerings, and
Absolutely.
seems to be a demand
we keep
for
going.
extra ones. Yeah.
So, we are incredibly fortunate. I mean, representing the 5 municipalities around the lake, it's amazing to us that all of the stories are different. I often say that they're like siblings, the different communities, because they have the same sort of core, but different personalities, different stories, different experiences. So we have a lot to work with, and not enough hours in the day most of the time, but that's okay. Keeps us going.
What are some other things, I'm sure that obviously, takes up a lot of your time, but what are some other things, especially, this time of year, that you're busy with at the Historical Society?
As the holidays approach, we tend to focus on the Philip Brown House because it just really shines during the Christmas season. It just is what it is. So we do a children's story time, pajama story time. We do tours, holiday tours over there. Have a wonderful Christmas tree in the entryway, and it just decorates quite well. So that's sort of our big focus at the moment. We just wrapped up in October a gangster bus tour that's always popular, and so much so that we've decided to add one in April, and tickets are already selling. One of the time slots is getting close to sold out on that. So there's always plenty, like I say, plenty to do, and our website and our Facebook page have a lot of information on that, whatever we have coming up.
And I know you've done even programs at the library and things like
Absolutely.
that. We've had even some of our staff have shot and covered some of those events there.
And
too.
our January one is actually about Cass Gilbert and his overall connection to White Bear, because he did a number of homes and other things in the area as well, which, like I said, when we were in New York in particular, we were able to find information on those that we didn't have locally before. So it's kind of exciting.
Now, I know this has been a while now, but you had moved locations where the Historical Society was, and I know we even did some stories about that way back when, but has that move proved to be beneficial for you guys?
It's been wonderful. The space is laid out a little bit differently. We loved being at the depot. There were huge advantages to that, but being in the armory, we have a larger room for our resource and library space, and we've seen our traffic from the research standpoint increase dramatically. Our biggest hurdle at the moment is that there's no air conditioning up there, and so for the collections, we're working on a project with that actually, which is far less exciting, but very incredibly important. So one of the things that we're working on with that, we are actually kicking off an annual appeal to fundraise for better an HVAC system that we have had designed and working with all of that. At the same time as launching a capital campaign for the town hall issues and additions and things to finish the interior. So there's always, that sort of administrative kind of piece of things and always a need for general support as well. So it's lots of things going on in our office. It's never a dull moment.
Well, and too, I mean, there's always things going on around town. I'm sure, with the new, Lakeshore Players building, the fact that they won't be in the current building, which is, pretty historic building in its own right. I don't know how you guys feel. I'm sure it's exciting. Obviously, they're going to have this wonderful new space, but the old one had such a charm and is so well known to people in the area here. Absolutely,
and that's certainly something that's been kind of on our radar. We're hoping that some organization or church group or something will find a use for it that dovetails with the actual building as it is. I know it has its challenges from a physical standpoint, but it's one of those things that you'd hate to see disappear. But
it'll be a neat area to have, with the existing White Person for the Arts. And I know we were at the groundbreaking, and I think the mayor even said kind of the arts district, if you will, and just to have that, so visible right there. But at the same time, the current building has a charm to it. So hopefully something will come in there.
And you never know. It's one of those things that sometimes those purposes again sort of come out of the woodwork, and it's not something you anticipated, but we're hopeful. We've been kind of keeping our ear out there if there is anybody looking for a space.
Sure. So is there any need then with all the things you guys have going on, if people are interested in helping, obviously financially, but even if are there volunteer opportunities available?
Absolutely. The interior demolition, if you will, I hate to sort of use that word, but as we deconstructed the walls and that sort of thing, that was all volunteer labor. That was not a contractor going in and doing it. And I'm not sure the township believed me when I said we can definitely get people passionate who will come in and do this in a safe way, but get it done. As we go forward, there will be an absolute need for, as we create our plan here, we'll need obviously licensed electricians and things to do some of the major work, but there will be lots of painting, lots of drywall, lots of that type of thing, as well as, hanging displays and putting together for the town hall. We have one of the things for the Philibrown House, getting ready for the holidays, is we call it a decorating party. Which it is. It's fun and everybody has a good time, but it's volunteers coming together to help us get the Philibrown ready for the holidays. And so that's on our website and Facebook page as well. And there's always a need for people in our office to come in and catalog things, go through the documents and do some indexing for us. We have scanning, we have filing, we have all sorts of projects. So we rely heavily on our volunteers.
You guys usually aren't just sitting around with nothing to do, is what you're saying.
No, there's never an opportunity for that, which is okay.
Yeah, it's good. Good to be busy.
Keeps it interesting, yep.
Yeah. And so if people are interested, like you said, you're on Facebook, or they can go to the website directly.
Absolutely, and our phone number, of course, is out there as well on the Facebook and website. But please contact us, stop on in. We're always looking for other people who have a passion for the community and for history.
Great. Well, we'll put some of that info up here on the screen, but we appreciate you taking the time to talk today, and I'm sure we'll be seeing you at different events, but also having you on again in the future, hopefully with some exciting updates.
Sounds good. We'd love to have you out when we open the building and or any of the Christmas events or other things as well.
So that would be great.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you
so much. And it's time for a short break. We'll be right back with more of Northeast Journal in just a minute.
Heroes come from small towns.
Many of our heroes coming home from wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have a new battle: unemployment. Hello, I'm Rocky Lynn.
I'm Sergeant Dejan Farrell.
And I'm Captain Ron Jarvie. The unemployment rate for today's veteran is 12%.
That's twice the average of others living here in the Heartland.
This year, tribute to the troops, the armed forces, and members of the Upper Midwest ME chapter are asking you to help. Hire today's veteran.
To hire today's veteran, visit positivelyminnesota.com/veterans.
Extra DWI enforcement is now being served on Minnesota roads. Don't be what you drink.
Welcome back to Northeast Journal. The Firefly Sisterhood connects women diagnosed with breast cancer and trained breast cancer survivors to offer support, guidance, and hope.
Next time, okay. Go ahead, your turn. I was 34. My older daughter was 3, and my youngest was just about 7 months. Okay, Marin's gonna go first. I found a lump, and they wanted to proceed with a biopsy right away, and then a couple days later I got a phone call and found out that, yep, I sure did, had breast cancer. You know, the message to her when I was diagnosed was that Mommy is sick, I have cancer, but the doctors are going to help me get better. I had a lot of great support from friends and family too. They really rallied, and that made all the difference in the world. I'm still incredibly grateful. I think that it helped me to take this experience that I had and do something good with it. You know, I want to provide support to let, you know, in general, these young moms know that it's going to be okay. You know, this is something that you can get through, and I understand what you're worrying about and a lot of times what you're feeling through this process.
I think we were matched well in that way, so then we could kind of talk through like, oh, well, how do you tell your kids when they're this age, or how do you, deal with when they ask you why you're sick. She's just like my special angel, that just kind of knows what happened, how you feel, how it is to be, like a working mom and going through a scare like that.
I get out of the Firefly Sisterhood that I didn't realize. I mean, I thought I was going to be giving back, but I'm getting so much as a survivor because I have the opportunity to process still my journey, and it's something that I didn't really know that I needed to do until it started to happen. Kind of a way for us all to heal and to take, this negative experience and do something really good with it, be a part of something really good. All right, bye, Mindy.
That's all we have time for on this month's show. Thanks for tuning in, and join us again next month for another edition of Northeast Journal. We leave you this time with some sights and sounds from a recent concert by the Silver Harmony Singers in White Bear Lake.